What's up, everybody? What's going on? Welcome to Unleashed. Boy, we got a lot to hit. Obviously, a wild football weekend. I got to at least go back to Friday night because I'm sitting there saying, all right, now, not that I really expected this to happen, but I'm sitting there saying if everything goes according to a certain script, this could be a home run night for the Jets. And then I'll get into the weekend stuff. But here, just from Friday night from the college, right? That's the first thing that happened. Absolute worst case scenario for the Jets. It's not even close. Like, if you look at the options, and I talked about this on Thursday and Friday, like the possibilities of what could happen on Friday with Indiana and Oregon, there was at least three, maybe a fourth one, and I'll kind of run through it again, where the Jets would have absolutely benefited tremendously coming to the draft with Mendoza, with Moore, with the Raiders, and making them think and everything. So the first situation was, and we knew that this was going to happen, Mendoza balls out and Dante Moore balls out. Wow. All right. So you got the kid who's a little bit younger, a little less experienced, his college close to where the Raiders play. Mendoza balls out, but Moore balls out. That's something that could be advantageous to the Jets because maybe it gives the Raiders something to think about. That didn't happen. The other thing that would have been advantageous, because I was so sold on Mendoza, I even said if Mendoza went like 11 for 19 with 3 picks and a fumble, and the Indiana Hoosiers got absolutely bludgeoned and Oregon won, I would still take Mendoza over Dante. Like, there was nothing in that game that would have sent me a signal to reevaluate how I view the quarterback spot pertaining for what I wanted the Jets to do. So if Mendoza would have stumbled, again, the first one, they both ball out. That didn't happen. The next one, if Mendoza would have played poorly and Moore would have shined, well, now it still doesn't mean guaranteed that the Raiders would have said, okay, that's enough evidence here. We're going to take more pass on Mendoza. But again, it would have complicated their analysis. And when that happens, you never know whether it's a David. I know Brady's there, so that's probably going to lead to sensibility and never work out for the Jets anyway, because they actually have a real football person there instead of Dopey Davis doing whatever he does. But that situation didn't happen. Now, here's the other thing. I would have even taken this situation. Mendoza plays amazing, which he did, and Moore plays okay, but Oregon somehow wins, Oregon advances, and then Moore balls out against Miami while Mendoza's home, and that also would have given the Raiders something to think about. Instead, what we have is the absolute worst situation where, first play from scrimmage, Moore throws a pick six, then throws it through for 9,000. Mendoza had more touchdowns than he had incompletion. So there's no doubt, guys, who the absolute best player is. And there was no doubt for me going in, but at least there was a couple of possibilities like, all right, maybe this could happen and this could open up this area of dialogue and maybe this could happen. So we're at a situation now, right, where it's pretty much worst case for the Jets. There's no clear-cut third quarterback, obviously. Mendoza's obviously going to the Raiders. Now, I still do think that there's a chance that Moore comes out, whether or not he tries to avoid going to the Jets. I pulls a Peyton Manning. I don't really know how that's going to happen or what's going to go down there. I don't know. We'll find out. But I think that any leverage, anything that could have transpired that was very favorable for the Jets the other night, obviously went the other direction, went the wrong way. And there's nothing you can do about it. The only thing that you could do, maybe the only other option would be at this point, is if Moore does come out. And, if I had to handicap it, maybe 30%, whatever. The NIL money changes everything. So if he's on the fence, which I know he is, 10, 11 million bucks, boom, you go back to school. The problem for Moore is that next year's draft crop is thought to be much better than this year. So, now he's got to weigh the merits, and this is a very tough decision because it has ruined a lot of people over the years where if he goes to the NFL, even though even though he's young and he's only 20 and he's got to put on some real functional weight, he barely weighs over 200 pounds. The kid has a lot of talent. I like Dante Moore, but I don't know how the Jets justify taking him at 2 if he even does come out. So maybe if he, has a great combine, interviews well, which I would imagine that he will. Maybe he still does come out. The Jets aren't sold. The Jets trade out. The Cardinals, whomever, the Jets get a stopgap for next season. And maybe it goes that way. Maybe. But, I mean, you sit down. The game's over before you even settle into your spot on the couch. The game's over. It's over. And there's just really nothing Like there was no intrigue in that game. Every single thing that you were hoping for from a Jets perspective, why in the world could something not go our way? I don't know. I don't understand. It doesn't matter. And listen, I could lament and I could scream as loud as I want. You know, it's not going to change anything. The script that needed to happen for the Jets simply did not happen. The Jets did not get lucky. So now the Jets need to create their own fortune. You know, they've got to get a little lucky with the things that they can't control, more coming out, whatever, and then somebody behind them falling in love with Dante Moore and then trading up. And then, listen, I'd be okay with this because even if Dante Moore played better, and again, if he played great, that's different. That's a different calculus. If he played better than he did, which was not good, but better instead of awful, well, you know, maybe you start to say, well, you know, you got a pretty good old line. You find the second receiver opposite Garrett Wilson, a big body, 6'3", whatever, 50-50 ball, big radius kind of guy. And then you could kind of talk yourself into drafting Dante Moore at number 2. I can't do that right now because I don't trust the Jets' ability to develop him and coach him up. And I also don't think he's seasoned enough yet. And that's just the obvious part of it, where I'm willing to roll the dice. Now, somebody else might be. And if that's what they want to do, I'm open for business. I'll build out the roster. I'll get the linebacker. I'll get the edge rusher. I'll get the safety. I'll get the corner. I'll get one more old lineman, and I'll save that draft capital for next year. And I'll see what's going on with Kyler Murray. I'll see what's going on with Kirk Cousins. You know all the names at this point. So that was a very, very disheartening start to the weekend. Nothing you can do about it. You got to move on. And as we move on, and by the way, I'll obviously take questions here. BT Unleashed, hit me up on the live function here, and I will respond in real time. Still not up on YouTube. Nothing I can do about it. So instead of crying like a baby, got to plow ahead, do what I can do, control what I can control, talk about the show. It's driving me nuts that we're still not on YouTube, but there's really nothing that I can do right now. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time with that. All right. Now, you get to the weekend. First of all, rather than starting in sequence, I'm not going to run through every game here. I want to cherry pick a couple of things. I don't want to hear about Justin Herbert anymore being a star. Enough with the Justin Herbert praise. Done. Enough. Not interested. Doesn't deserve it. It's no longer with merit. He is 0-3 in the playoffs, right? The first playoff game, his team was up 27-0, and they lose. Now, that's also on coaching. That's also on the defense. But there were plays within that sequence where you make one first down, you make one better throw, you're going to win the game. So 27-0 collapse is on his resume, number one. Then the next game, the next year, and this is sequentially, by the way. So 27-0 epic collapse. Not good. All right. Young Chargers just trying to figure things out. Last year, 4 picks against the Houston Texans. 4. Like imagine, well, I'll get to that in a second. And then last night, you score 3 points. You score 3 points. I mean, I know it was windy. It was also a little windy in Philly. And I saw Purdy make a couple of plays. I don't want to hear about the weather. It was not 5 inches of snow. You know, it wasn't raining. Enough. Get your team in the end zone. 3 points. I mean, and if you watch the game, which you did, how many throws were there where Herbert was either like, and I know his own line's not that good. I get that. I know a couple of it. Keenan Allen dropped one. I know that as well. But when you're the quarterback and you're a top 10 pick, whatever he was, I forget where he went exactly, but highly drafted, right? And I think more importantly, when you're positioned, and people just kind of rotely say that, they're like, well, you know, Mahomes and Josh Allen and, you know, Burrow and, you know, Herbert. No, Herbert, I don't want to hear it. Herbert's not in that category. Doesn't deserve it. There's no way. Imagine, I'm Giants fans, right? So imagine if Eli's first play, instead of going 2 for 2, now they're also with Eli, and we've talked about this, not to run down his career now. I'm not going to do that now, but just to cross the bridge to get to another point. Imagine Eli, who went 2 for 2 with 2 Super Bowls and 2 great runs, many road wins, flawless play, MVP twice in the Super Bowl. Imagine if Eli's first playoff game as a Giant, he and Coughlin, they flushed out a 27-0 lead, and they lose the game, right? Number one. And then the next game, and again, still young Eli, still feeling his way out and still feeling his way around. Then the next game, Eli, not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 interceptions, loss, you're going home. And then the next game, when you're an 11-win regular season team, you score 3 points. 3. I don't want to hear it. Like, to me, like, it's funny how this works. It's actually really funny. there are certain players who, for whatever reason, get unfairly knocked, and I'm just like locally off the top of my head, although I believe there's merit to some of it. You want to tell me Alonso has been treated a little bit unfairly, baseball, in the court of public opinion, where we kind of fixate on the flaws when he was here rather than what he does really well, or maybe even Lindor to a lesser extent, or even Judge, who is the best I've ever seen, all these MVPs, 1,100 OPS, 60 bombs every year, basically. But because the Yankees don't win, in a sport where one player can't truly change the outcome like baseball, Judge is maybe unfairly criticized and, feels that vitriol from certain fans. That's one aspect. And then there's the other end of the equation, the other side of the coin, where certain guys, no matter what they do, for whatever reason, maybe it's the market they play in, maybe it's which now the Charger. You think the Charger fans are calling up LA talk radio today, blasting Herbert and Harbaugh? Do you really think that that's going on? That's not happening. All right. So that's probably part of it. Maybe he's got a fairly benign personality, so he doesn't really invite that criticism. But it's amazing how year after year after year, Herbert is thought to be one of the best quarterbacks in football, and year after year after year does nothing. So, I mean, come on, guys. Can we finally position him where he is? He's good, and that's about it. But at this point, he's had a wildly disappointing NFL career. Like, I know. Just talking about Mendoza, Moore. If there's anybody that would take 27 touchdowns, 13 picks, which is what he had in the regular season, and playoff, flameouts, it's probably a Jet fan, because that would at least represent progress. But even when you get to that point, like with Sanchez, right? And even going back in the day with Todd and some of those other guys, right? There's still a point where, I don't care how thirsty you are for success or a championship or, sustained success, where you go to the playoffs 2 years in a row. Whoa. Eventually that gets old and that gets tiring, right? So the criticism's going to come. So while initially it would be good, imagine if the Jets quarterback was doing that. Like, I can't imagine. I honestly can't imagine what I would be saying about somebody that the Jets drafted a couple of years ago if last night put up 3 points, especially if it was against the Patriots, put up 3 points in a playoff game, sent packing, and then, oh yeah, by the way, last year, 4 picks. It really is interesting how there's like this selective pouncing on certain players. Don't get it, don't agree with it, but Herbert was awful last night. And I don't want to hear him thrown in the same category with the superstars, let alone even the guys who are maybe a cut below the superstars, but win a whole lot more, like Jalen Hurts and guys like that. All right, so now you get the Super Wildcard Weekend in totality. It was absolutely awesome. The first 3 games, the team this is an amazing stat that they put up during the Niners game yesterday, Niners-Philly, right? And that game was obviously still in the balance. Wild finish. A.J. Brown, Sirianni yelling at each other. A.J. Brown, the ridiculous drop. I mean, who knows if they're going to fire Sirianni. Got big problems up there or down there from where I am in Philly. So we'll see how they resolve that. It took the Dolphins a day or two to resign themselves to moving on from McDaniels. I don't know. Maybe Philly moved swiftly. That was not a good look. That was a pretty bad performance. And, especially against a Niners team that lost Kittle. But during the game, they put up the stat. The first 3 Super Wildcard games, the team that was trailing with 2 minutes to go in the game won. Are you kidding me? You want to talk about a wild script? Now, I made the picks on Friday here on Unleashed, right? And I thought for sure, and I was wrong. I'll admit this. You'll get that on this show, unlike a lot of other shows. When they're wrong, they just kind of ignore it. I will be wrong, and I will circle back to it and admit it if I have to and reference it if I have to, which I'm doing right now. So I thought the Rams would squash the Panthers. I really did. I remember saying I didn't think there'd be late Carolina money coming in. So, at 10.5 on Friday, all you want to probably do is shave that down 0.5 point. Worst you're going to do is a push. I'm thinking maybe 30-10, 20-7. That's kind of what I'm 23 to 27-13. That's what I was thinking, right? No. I was absolutely stunned at the way that game was. An awesome game. The fans were great. That's the importance of winning the division. And, here we are. We're off to a very, a rousing start, a surprising start. What are you going to do? And then you move into the Bears game, 21-3 at the half. Now, wow. All right. So the Bears had not beaten the Packers in a playoff game since the Sunday after we got attacked in Pearl Harbor, World War II. That's the last time that the Bears beat the Packers in the playoffs. Stunning stuff. Now, that throw, Caleb Williams made a lot of throws. That throw that he made on fourth down, where he rolled out to his left off 1 foot and dropped it with touch and distance off 1 foot, was really one of the best throws I've ever seen under duress, given the moment. And that's not hyperbole. Like Eli had a couple of great throws. Obviously, there's been a lot of great throws in playoff lore. But the difficulty, the degree of difficulty. Now, if it was one-on-one and you just had to, throw it over the top, that's hard enough. Rolling out, you're flushed, you're off 1 foot, boom. He had there were at least 3 Packers. I think there was 4. So he had to throw it perfect, like over the front line, in front of the second line, perfection. Wow. And then you're sitting there, and of course, Ben Johnson, listen, the one thing that I don't mind that much, and I know a lot of people get wrapped up in this, why is everybody so consumed what a coach says to their team in the locker room? This is one of the problems, right, with social media and having cameras everywhere. So Ben Johnson, all right, caught up. First of all, the handshake was a little classless. I think you got to do a better job than that. When you went, I know you're pumped up. I know it. I know you've got this energy that's surging through your body, and you feel like you can run through titanium steel because that's the high that you're on. But you're a coach. You're the leader. You're the visible face of the franchise. You got to do a better job than that kind of handshake. You have to do a better job on that. So if I'm going to criticize Ben Johnson for anything, it will be that. You can't do the hit and run, the quick one, and it doesn't look right, all right? That's where you got to process it a little differently. Give the guy 10 seconds before he gets to midfield. Let him celebrate, shake the hands like a big boy, and then get in the locker room and say whatever the hell you want to say. And, think about this. So Ben Johnson, I know Ben Johnson's had a few flare-ups with the media, whatever. I'd rather have a guy with edge and a little bit of whatever than a guy with absolutely nothing who's stoic, who project. Give me Ben Johnson any day of the week over the litany of coaches who just, recycle, no emotion. I'll take that guy any day. You know that. But to me, Ben Johnson, let me get this straight. Ben Johnson's going to get criticized because he said bleep the Packers, F the Packers. That's where we are. Are you kidding me, man? Think about that rivalry and think about how one side, just gave you the stat. World War II is the last time the Bears beat the Packers in a playoff game. And this guy's not allowed to get all fired up in front of his guys where he thinks now you got to know that there's cameras, I guess. But it's just amazing how it is amazing to me. Here's the bottom line. How soft, and I have said this a lot, how soft certain aspects of society has, but how it's become. It's amazing to me. The fake outrage. Ooh, the coach said a naughty word. The coach cursed. You'd think that it was T-ball and he dropped 9 F-bombs because his team had a walk-off win in T-ball. Give me a break, dude. Get over yourself, you softies. If you're on Ben Johnson for that, you are I'm talking to you, whoever you are. And there's a lot of yous, all right? Whoever you are more of a problem with society than an answer, than a solution, than resolution. Give me a break. You know what goes into coaching football? First of all, you never sleep. You're at the office all the time. You sleep on a couch. You're probably eating like a slob because you're just inhaling some fast food to get through the next tape session, right? You're cutting off years of your life with the stress and the pressure, the constant media updates and the job security. And then you go to OTAs, you go to, not organized stuff, barely organized stuff, whatever the terminology is. Then you get to the OTAs after you navigate the draft and the pressures of free agency. And then you go to camp. And I know it's not like it used to be. All the old timers say it. And I get it. But it's still training camp, where you're kind of sequestered for however long. And it's just you and your team. And you're trying to, impart your vision to them and get them to buy in for a franchise that doesn't want anything forever. And this guy's going to get harpooned for dropping a few F the Packers. Damn right. I'd say the same thing. Imagine if Aaron Glenn, we should only be so lucky, last night beats the Patriots, right? And Aaron says, who want to fly with them effing Jets? Something like that after the couple of wins that they had, which I like. I thought that was pretty good. And drops an F-bomb in there, and he throws the Patriots name in there. I'd be like, that's my guy. That is my leader. That is my coach. That's the dude that I want leading my team. Everything else is just noise. Noise. Really. just noise I have no interest in engaging in. And really, at this point in my life, I got no interest in hearing. Get over it, right? So the one thing that we learned this morning, and this is about, I think I saw the story right around 9 o'clock before I went on the air. Matt LaFleur. Now, there was a thought that, and this obviously would have complicated possibly the Giants situation, which I'll get to in a minute more thoroughly. They're going to retain him, which I think is the smart thing. I think LaFleur is a really good coach. I don't think he's got a great team. I really don't. I know there's a different standard out there in Green Bay. I get that as well. And I know that, his contract is up after next year. And, their GM and their president of football operations has been on record. He doesn't want a lame duck, which I agree with. So they're going to sit down, talk contract. He'll be back. It's a good fit. Hey, listen, I understand that it's not perfect. I get that. But when you're 76-40, all right, and as he 76-40-1, as he has done so far with the Green Bay Packers, and in 6 of the 7 years you've been there, you've made the playoffs. It's kind of hard to say with any sort of, merit that LaFleur should be fired. So he won't be. Now, you want to factor in a few other things and by the way, if you disagree with that, I think there's enough evidence where we could at least have the conversation. You're up 21-3 at the half. You got a young quarterback. You got a young coach. You got to find a way to stick him in the freezer, man. You got to find a way to win that game. Admittedly, you have to find a way to win that game, but you didn't. All right. So you've got a choice at that point. You got to get rid of somebody who works pretty well in Green Bay. The culture, they win. They're always a playoff team. There's no drama. And roll the dice on getting better, but also in certain areas getting worse and regressing. That's the real risk that you run when you hire somebody to come in and replace somebody who's done a good job, like the Ravens will do with Harbaugh and some other spots as well. Like the Knicks with Tom Thibodeau. That's a pretty good example as well. So I get it. Especially now you're mixing the emotion of losing to a division rival, even though the Packers have always been the beneficiaries of that relationship. But yeah, I mean, I don't love the fact that they're I think the last 3 years, they've been a 7 seed. You kind of just squeeze it in there. Lions had their moment. Bears had their moment this year. You got to probably find a way to do better than a 7 seed. So that game's not in Chicago. So maybe you get the occasional bye, be at a top seed here. I do like him. And I think that that's obviously good news that he will be retained. If you're John Harbaugh, how do you not have interest in the Packers job? You're a Midwest guy. It's one of the most revered spots in all the sports. And that would have been a highly intriguing, I would think, pursuit from their end. And I would think that he would have been very receptive to it on his end. So that's not going to happen. That's one less thing you got to worry about. And by the way, just buzzing around the rest of the weekend, before I get a little bit more to the Harbaugh stuff, read some of this stuff here as well. And even something on the Yankees with the bell. We got a lot to do today. The game, let me see. Where is it? Okay. So was surprised by the Rams score. I did pick the Bears to win. I thought the Jaguars would win. It's a tough loss. And by the way, I love Josh Allen. That also probably keeps McDermott around, unless next week is just gross, and which I don't think it will be. You would have to think McDermott's back. If they lose that game, that's a possible job opening, which maybe could have impacted Harbaugh, Stefanski, some of these other coaches obviously in demand. I mean, Philly, you've got to do something. You've got to, Philly, that's it. Whether it's Sirianni, whether it's Brown, whether it's both, I don't know what the problem is there. But when you look the way they looked for so long this year, you might just have to say, all right, hey, we captured a championship. We delivered it. We'll always be thankful to the men who did that. Obviously, Saquon, and Saquon's not going anywhere. Sirianni, the quarterback. It just feels like it's time for change there. There's just no cohesion with the Eagles. I don't know. Even with all the speculation, and Harbaugh coached there for, I want to say, 8 or 9 years early in his career. I have never seen Harbaugh once linked to the Eagles. Now, if there's an abrupt change soon and Sirianni's out, I don't know. Is that something Harbaugh will be interested in? I'm not really sure. But you just can't ask for a better weekend of football. Every game was tight. Last night, even though last night, the aesthetics of last night's game was awful. Just talked about the Chargers doing nothing, 16-3 the final. But even before that late touchdown there, it was close. So you're thinking, okay, All right, maybe here we go here. So the football is absolutely off and running. And now we get to what's going to be a hopefully transformative week for the New York Giants. The Giants have to get Harbaugh. And I'm not even saying that Harbaugh is the absolute clear-cut number one. I mean, he's right there. I made my case for McCarthy. I like Stefanski a lot. I don't know if I like him more than Harbaugh, but it's kind of close. But why I say the Giants can't mess this up, think about the perception of the New York Giants, right? The Giants, in a lot of ways, guys, and Giant fans hate when I say this, but this is the reality of it until proven otherwise. The Giants have, in essence, morphed into the Jets, and that is the worst thing that you can say about any NFL team, especially the one that was always the standard NFL team around here, and along with the Yankees, the Platinum franchise. So that's a big problem. Now, they finally found their quarterback. All right, so that begins to get you away from the vitriol because that's been a massive problem for a long time. So, and not by coincidence, when you find the quarterback, well, now suddenly the organization externally is viewed far more healthy than it was. Now, if you think about what are there, 8 openings? So forget about the Ravens opening. There could be more within the next day or so, but right now there's 8. Obviously, unless the Ravens pulled an all-timer and brought back Harbaugh, there's 7 jobs you got to worry about. So where we're from Harbaugh's perspective, and I think there's really only 3, maybe 4. To me, the top 3 jobs, and I've really been saying this from day one. I was saying this during the year with Sal. Like, I always thought that the Giants opening was going to be incredibly appealing. I know we can sit here and talk about, how ownership and things going, and I don't even mean Mr. Mara's health, and that's totally separate and most important. God bless that man, and we're all praying for him. I'm separating that. I'm putting that I'm not even talking about that, obviously. From a football operations point of view, the Giants have been a zero, an absolute zero. But as I watch Dart play, I'm sitting there saying, okay, right away, this becomes a much more appealing landing spot for a real worthy coach rather than going the coordinator route and trying to convince somebody to come take your job. The Giants just, they can't mess this up this week. That's all there is to it. Like, there's certain times you got to sell you, and they got to sell themselves, but I mean sell themselves where you have to hit a grand slam in the presentation because you have nothing else really that's incredibly appealing to somebody who has won a ton. 61% of his regular season games, that's Harbaugh, 18 years, 1 Super Bowl. That man's a winner, all right? And if, his kicker hits a 45-yard field goal, to wrap up the regular season, guess what? We're talking about Tomlin right now and not Harbaugh because Harbaugh still has a job. Like, that's the tenuous, unfair nature of being a coach in modern pro sports. Think about that. Like, if that ball goes in, Ravens are playing, Pittsburgh's done, he's still coaching, Tomlin's probably out. It's crazy. So I have always thought that in this coaching cycle, none of the last few, but in this one, I really thought the Giants coaching job would be an incredibly attracting destination. I do think they're going to pay. There were stories over the weekend that were refuting the thought that he needed $20 million a year, full personnel power. That wasn't refuted by him, but some really well-sourced, reputable people put that out there. So you got to believe it, right? So to me, you're looking at these jobs and, Ravens aside, pertaining to Harbaugh, Giants very appealing, Falcons very appealing, a lot of talent out there in Atlanta, pretty good place to live, good weather, bad division, good stadium, good owner. Like, if the Giants, if we're having the conversation this week, right, that either the Giants didn't acquiesce on whatever demand, and I don't mean unrealistic demand, but when you're John Harbaugh, you're coming in and you're telling them what you want, and they have to listen. That's it. Because you got the hammer and you have the leverage and they're desperate. Now, could they pivot to Stefanski? Sure. But as I've talked about, the risk, and this is a really delicate threading here, is that, like, if they don't get Harbaugh, and I know they've already had their time with Stefanski, but as they move to Harbaugh now this week, if Stefanski is either falling in love with somebody else there or just not feeling that reciprocal love from the Giants because he feels, and this is all that matters, we can say whatever we want, dude, get over it. Big money's going to take care of that. But if you're a human and you feel that a team suddenly is, going like emotionally and financially to somebody that you think you're comparable to, even though you're a lot younger, well, that's going to turn you off. And the one thing the Giants can't do was, I believe with all my heart, All my heart, the Giants are walking away with a hell of a head coach. I've got no doubts about that. I really do. And if they don't, the Giants will have they will have colossally failed to a level that even I thought that these current Giants, the Giant organization now, was incapable of. Like, it's on a tee, man. Find a way to get Harbaugh, find a way to get Stefanski, find a way to get McCarthy, find a way to do it. So they're going to have their coach. I'm not worried about that. I'm not. But I know that you want Harbaugh. And I think the Giants, for you, need to deliver you Harbaugh. That's it. Like, it's already been written. You know, flip on the radio, go to X, go to Soch, go to your buddies' texts. Everybody, Harbaugh. As soon as Harbaugh got fired, I got flooded by text messages from my buddies, most of whom are actually Giant fans, and it was to a man. Get that guy, whatever it takes, Harbaugh or bust. This is the dude. So that's been the narrative. It is now up to the New York Giants to make sure that that narrative does not implode on their watch and based on what they do or do not do. You have to punch this in. You have to find a way to get Harbaugh to take this job. You have to. All right, so, so hit on LaFleur. I also do think that, as I run through the Giants and the Falcons, like, I'm just looking at this list here. So Green Bay's obviously crossed out. LaFleur's going there. This is really pertaining to Harbaugh. I think that the Browns, I wouldn't rule them out myself. There were different sources over the weekend that linked him to the Browns, at least having, surface interest. And once you have surface interest and once you get in somebody's building or have a conversation, if that franchise, and you would have to think the Browns are pretty damn desperate at this point, if that team is so desperate that they do whatever and they just acquiesce and acquiesce and acquiesce and acquiesce, like whether it's money, power, or both, like I can't say that it's impossible that he winds up with the Browns. I don't think it happens, but you got to at least leave the door slightly ajar. I would actually keep an eye on the Titans to an extent. Now, the word is that Harbaugh is going to lock himself in his film room, and he already did this weekend, and just plow through the film and basically watch every play that Dart's made and every play that Cam Ward's made. I think Cam Ward's a pretty dynamic player, and I think Tennessee's a great state. I think it's a great place to live. I know they've got a lot of money. I think they've got about $100 million in cap space, and the Jets are right around 70-something. Tennessee has even more. I think they might have the most. No, the Raiders, I think, have the most. Tennessee's right there. I think there's a lot of appealing aspects to what the Tennessee Titans are doing. So while we might sit here and say, come on, it's Tennessee, it's the Titans, what are Titans? And it's very easy to say, Cam Ward's a bust. What the hell did he do? If you really consume the NFL, like I know many of you do, and aren't just Jets or Giants heavy and Jets and Giants intensive, and you do follow what's going on in Tennessee, you'll know that Cam Ward is actually, like, his first year. Don't look at the stats. In terms of film, what he's put out there is pretty appealing. I don't know how appealing to Harbaugh, but appealing enough to make them a bit of a threat there. So to me, that's where you're going to run into some issues here, But this is the absolute week. We just have to get this done. That's it. At least get it done in terms of movement. Can you imagine what would be worst case here? Let me just jot this down. Let me go through it. Then I'll start reading some of these messages. Then I'll get you some Yanks and Mets hot stove stuff. One on, obviously, Belly, and then something on Peralta more for the Mets. So, Giants. We're going to go Falcons here. We're going to go Browns, Titans, Arizona, separate category. Not worried about them. All right, so let's say that Harbaugh were to wind up with the Titans. Let's say that Stefanski. Now, I think that that's less possible than this next item I'll throw out. I don't really think he's going to be a Brown, as I said before, but just for the sake. Let's say that Stefanski winds up in Atlanta, which I think is very plausible. Well, now you got Stefanski off the board, and you've got Harbaugh off the board. And then you've got some other pretty appealing situations, but now the list of appealing coaches is dwindling. Well, at that point, I mean, if I'm the Giants, I very easily and very happily pivot to Mike McCarthy, but you would not like that. And again, the ability to quantify that emotion is very hard for many of you to do. And this is one of the themes early in the week last week. If you guys missed it, just go to YouTube, check it out. Even though we're not on YouTube Live, we do download all the stuff immediately. We'll get back up on YouTube, whenever. That's on them, hopefully soon. But one of the shows, I think that would have been either Tuesday or Wednesday, I talked about that. And I think that the Giants here are handling it well. I do, because I think when you look at what they had to do to satisfy elements of the Rooney Rule, which, by the way, is a sham on so many levels. The spirit is right of the Rooney Rule, but the application is what it is. It's not right. And I've said that. Again, born out of a good thing, but and I'm not saying it doesn't work at all, but it's a box that too many people check. And, it is what it is. I'd like to see it tweaked a little bit so it's more fair. I don't even have an answer as to how you do that. But see, the Giants did what I think other teams need to do. And this, to me, tells me that the Giants will wind up in a good spot here. Because when they fired Dable, they started to line things up. And it was done very stealthily, no leaks, within the building. They had their plan so that now they've already, handled the or check the boxes for the Rooney Rule. So that's good. So now they could just jump into what they have to jump into and get the guy that they want. Whereas, and I also think that that's part of the reason why, plus I think that they think he's good. But if you're the Packers and you fire, which they're not going to, if you just tuned in, LaFleur is going to be back. He's going to get the extension. But if they would have fired him today or tomorrow, well, now you've got to start the process of everything. And that obviously entails the Rooney Rule and many other aspects there. So as you do that, the Harbaughs and the Stefanskis, you would imagine, and the McCarthys, I would think, well, not that they would bring McCarthy back in Green Bay, but you know what I mean? They would be behind it. So at least I have the sense here that the Giants have been buttoned up and they've had their ducks in a row and they've had a plan. And that's a good starting point for a franchise that really, for the last 10 years, outside of 1 year, really has felt as if they have been planless. So that's a good job. And I do think they're going to wind up with Harbaugh. And if not, I think they wind up with Stefanski. And I think that the pivot would be a very good one. I really do. All right, let's get to some messages here. How about Notorious Neil version on X? All right. I don't want another coach with a losing record. No Stefanski. Harbaugh's a winner. All right. Listen, Notorious, I get that, Neil. I guess Neil's your first name. Thank you, Neil. I think personally and respectfully, I really think that is a short-sighted way of looking at it. Because I could also say, now it depends what you're looking for. More stability, better resume. Sure. I mean, Harbaugh's that guy. But who has more upside, the 63-year-old man or the 46-year-old coach, who, by the way, has already proven the ability to forge forward despite being surrounded by the most inept people and ownership this side of the Jets or comparable to the Jets in the Browns? I mean, really, I almost, this is going to sound crazy, and I do disagree with you. I respect that you want Harbaugh. That's fine. But I don't think that you need to get there by denigrating or completely devaluing Stefanski. To me, and this is the part that will sound a little weird, like a contradiction, because you're supposed to win in the NFL, and that's judged by Super Bowls. And Harbaugh's got one. Stefanski's got none. But to me, if you win 11 games, as he did a couple of times with the Browns, and you win the Coach of the Year twice with the Browns, with some of the quarterbacks that he had and the quarterback play that and the quarterback room that he had to deal with, not to mention this year with Sanders and, all the other stuff, retreads and veterans and backups and nothing. I mean, he's probably saying, please fire me. Get me the hell out of here so I can go to a real franchise. To me, when you win early, when you do what he did with the Browns early, I know it's going to sound crazy, but to me, it's almost as great of an accomplishment as actually winning the Super Bowl with a healthy, forward-thinking, buttoned-up, good franchise. Think about what the man's had to overcome in Cleveland. So I think Stefanski's terrific. I really do. I think you're sleeping on him. That's your opinion. That's certainly your prerogative. I get that. But I do not share that opinion. All right, how about this? DM013. Why are you so convinced Mendoza is going to be a top quarterback in the NFL? Does he have the arms talent to throw into smaller windows in the NFL? Yeah, I do. Why am I so convinced? Thank you for that. I've been saying this for a while. I remember where, like you or like some of you, I was doing a lot of reading during the summer and getting a sense of, as I like to do before the college football season starts, just get a sense like, all right, is the next draft going to be an O-line draft? Is it a quarterback draft? Is there, a crop of 4 or 5 receivers where this is thought to be a receiver draft, a defensive edge rush. Like, I just want to get a sense. That's my first pursuit. What's the main position? Like, who's most represented? All right, with great players that are going to be worthy of going top 15. That's how I start. And then, obviously the quarterbacks are central and most on my radar. And you knew there was a dearth of them. You knew it. Like, I didn't think Arch was coming out. Didn't start off well against the Buckeyes, so that changed everything. Played poorly. Heard the boos. Beat up on some bad teams and then started to regenerate at the end. But I never really thought he was coming out this year, right? Who knows? Maybe if the Giants had the first overall pick, he would have. But I never really thought that was seriously in play. And for a while, it was like Mendoza, Moore, Simpson. And then obviously Simpson is lower than Mendoza and Moore, although I do think Simpson's better than some of you do. But the reason why I really think Mendoza is the real deal is because there's not a quality that he doesn't possess. And, first of all, he's big. He's 6'5", 225. And when you're 6'5", 225 at this age, in 3, 4, 5 years of better nutrition, and more importantly, NFL weight room, and that's your job, you're going to be 6'5", 236, 237 before you know it. Check. Good size. The kid's brilliant. I mean, the kid is a steady, easy leader. Check. I think he's got great anticipation in terms of the smaller windows. I think he's got a really good arm. I don't think it's like Josh Allen cannon-like. I'm not, or even Jeff George, if you remember that back in the day as an NFL draft prospect who bounced around, and it was a head case, but had a great arm. I just think that I think he's got everything. Now, you can, I don't know some of these recent quarterbacks here that have come out. Have they had everything? Well, no, I don't think that they have. And I also think that there's great value by being at a place like Indiana that has no football history. I think the last time they were in the Rose Bowl was 1948. I think I heard that on during their game. I think it was 48. It was pre-1950, 46, 48, whatever it was. So I think that kind of, it's an intangible. I can't quantify it. But when you go to a school that has no history, like the easy thing is, all right, back in the day, you know what? I'm going to play for Dean Smith, or, I'm going to go play for Calhoun at UConn, or I'm going to stay local and play for Coach Carnesecca, and we're going to win 25 games with our eyes shut, right? Like when you just jump into a machine, I'm not saying that you're not good, and I'm not saying that at all, but it's already got momentum, and it's easier to jump in the car when it's already moving. I think it's a lot harder to jump in a car with no wheels, jack it up, put the wheels on, and then hit top speed. Like there's something there that to me is incredibly rare and incredibly valuable. And then I look at this emotional maturity. Some of his throws against the Buckeyes, those numbers weren't incredible, but some throws that he made along the way were just, to me, reflective of a guy. And this is how I judge you, of a guy, fourth quarter, 7, 8, 9 minutes to go, clock ticking, cold, January, on the road, against a good team. That's well coached with a pass rush. Are you going to stand up and feel the heat and be willing to get popped as you deliver a big throw? And that's number one, and my answer for him is yes. Number two, when somebody's open, even if they're not really open, like they're really open in college, put it through that smaller, less defined window, check. And if you have to flush the pocket and you're met with the choice of extend the play, off platform, run it and make some yards, check, or off platform, throw it on the run, check, that's a guy that I want on my team. He's better than Dante Moore. He's better than Simpson. He's better than anybody playing college football right now. It's not even close. So that's why what I said on Friday, I meant it. Like, I have been so in on Mendoza. I was hoping that Mendoza had 2 picks and like a strip sack that he didn't see, that you'd have people saying, I don't know, like the Mel Kiper types. I don't even know. And I like Mel. That's not a shot. But like people who do what Mel does, right? Who are wrong more than they're right. That's just the reality of it. Like one of those types saying, I don't know, maybe he's really not going to feel that pressure coming from the blind side. How did you not see that? Like, I wanted him to play so poorly, and Dante Moore play so amazing that the Raiders couldn't help but really start to get in their own way and be the Raiders, even though Tom Brady's there. I get that. And at least have something to contemplate as they really evaluated what the best route was for them in terms of the number 1 overall pick. Do they take Mendoza? Do they take Moore? Do they allow the Jets to trade up one spot? Do they allow somebody else to trade up? Like, there was a lot of options, and I ran through this at the start of the show. And if you missed it, I'll very briefly reset. Like the first option was Mendoza bowls out, Moore bowls out. All right, good. Raiders have something to think about. Jets are emboldened to take Moore or two if he plays well and under that scenario. And then, okay, that could be a win-win situation. Or even if they both play well, Jets still don't want to commit to a young 20-year-old quarterback. They want to look to next year, upgrade some other weaknesses, which they have to because their roster is awful. Well, then I'm like, all right, still the win because somebody else will want to move up to the 2 spot if Moore would have played great. And that's a good situation for the Jets. Or Mendoza plays like S, Moore plays amazing, and then boom, that further changes the situation, or at least gives teams something to think about. Or, Dante Moore plays okay, Mendoza plays great, but somehow Oregon wins the game, and then Oregon goes and they ball out, and Moore balls out, and he's the impetus behind a national championship win against Miami, which would also give people reason to pause and reevaluate this. Now, so we got the exact opposite. By the way, I don't know why I just did that, right? So I went, no, this is great. Are any of your kids doing this? I don't know who started this. I don't know why it started. And I just want to know when it's going to end. The kids, and my kids do this, they must do it about 20 times a day at this point. Now, I know when I was their age, I would say annoying stuff too. But there is this little, I guess it's a trend, a fad, whatever you want to call it, where they call your name. Like, so my kids will say, Dad. And I'll say, yeah. And they'll say it with urgency. Now I'm pretty good at the game. So I'm actually better than them. So I get them more than they get me. But the first few times they would get me. And I'd be in here or I'd be doing whatever. Dad, yeah. And they'd go, no. And I'd be like, what? that was a weird conversation. Does anybody else deal with that? And the way they do it, the urgency and the tone and the pitch in their voice, they are getting very good at disguising it. And just even though I'm better than them at this game now, I figured it out. They still get me once. So my daughter got me yesterday. And I was in the middle of work and she does it differently than he does it. And he does it more. Well, actually, she probably does it more now. Anyway, just caught me off guard. Anybody else deal with I guess we'll call it the no game. These kids are that bad in their minds. Oh my God. All right, let me get some other stuff here. Yeah, what we got here? All right. Somebody reposted this stream. I'm not sure what that means. Reposted. I have no idea what that means. Hopefully yeah. All right. Let me just address this again. Everybody's asking, Samson, does BT not stream on YouTube anymore? No. BT is desperately dying to be able to stream back on YouTube. But we are in the middle of something that I simply cannot control. And, it's funny, back in the day, when our parents would have an issue, they would get on the phone, they would call somebody, and I could still see my parents like, come on, pick up the phone, like customer service. I think I'd rather deal with that now than dealing with AI technology responding back. I'm like, all right, is this a real person? Is this a bot? Is this AI generated? Because they personalize it in a way that makes you think that it's real when we know that it's not real. So I say that because it is impossible to get a direct answer outside of a regurgitation of policies and a very, very nebulous timeline. I don't think it's going to be that long. I've been saying that for a week or so. This is now week number 2 where the infraction, whatever the guideline, community guideline, which I certainly did not mean to do, just figuring this stuff out. But yeah, I cannot live stream right now on YouTube. It's driving me absolutely insane. And again, if I let it bother me, it's going to really be it's going to be a problem because it's going to detract me from doing my job. So I just say, whatever, control what you can control, talking to the mic, do a show. Here we go. All right, Mark, Bears fandom welcomes you to be a fan, even if it's for the playoffs. Yeah, I remember saying, Mark, first of all, I'm really happy for you guys. It's absolutely awesome, dude. And I'll tell you about something I tweeted after the game over the weekend. Like the Bears fans, man, first of all, the rush of emotions, being down 21-3. Like, think about that. And we've all been in these situations. It's freezing. You're at home, so you're all amongst yourselves. I know there were Packer fans there, but 90% Bears fans, whatever the number was, right? And it's halftime. And you slink to the urinal, you go to the bathroom, and, you're shuffling your feet, you're pissed off, you get another beer. You're like, oh, I'm going to lose to these guys again. 21-3, can't even score a touchdown. Like, so there's the emotion that you had going into the game, and that place was on fire pregame. And then the reality, or what appeared to be the reality, of the fate of a brutal exit and ousting from the playoffs at the hands of the team that you hate the most of anybody in the NFL. And then the exhilarating, completely unexpected fourth down conversions, one leg throws into triple coverage. Wow. So, first of all, unbelievable game. I am not capable, Mark, though I do appreciate the invitation. Like, I could want you guys to be happy because that's what's great about sport when you see something like that. Not the same fan base is celebrating over and over and over. I love when somebody new cracks through, and I think it's awesome. But and in a weird way, even though I'm a Jets fan, I kind of want the Bills to get there, even though I thought the Jaguars would beat them, only because I love Josh Allen. I just love what he represents, how he comports himself, how he plays. The guy's just, no drama, no nonsense, awesome, right? And it's not like it's the Pats who I hate, or the Dolphins who I grew up hating because of Marino. A large part of my life, the Bills have been kind of like us, a non-entity in the NFL. And their fans, to me, are most closely resemble Jets fans, in my opinion, more than the Pats and the Dolphins. So I can kind of get behind a Bills playoff win for their fans because I think that they're awesome. Having said that, I got my teams. I can't become a Bears fan. I appreciate that, Mark. I'm going to have to respectfully turn that down. But I remember saying about 2 weeks ago, I'm like, would it stun you if there was a Jaguars-Bears Super Bowl? Well, I mean, the Jaguars, they very easily could have had it, and they should have had it on some level if it wasn't for the great Josh Allen. And here we are, the Bears still have another chance. So that was just unbelievable. And I'm sitting there watching the game. This is what I tweeted too, just to finish up, pay off that thought before. I'm watching. I tweet after the game. I'm like, I need to experience this again. I need to feel this as a football fan. I mean, we've gone through this chapter and verse. The Unkillable Jets post-game shows, all the shows on the Fan, me and Sal, right? Jets, Giants, non-entity, basically apathy. For most of my 3 years on the station, apathy, where the season was over. So that Giants had a little flicker this year, beating the Chargers, getting some leads, Dart, obviously, and then some juice firing the coach. And there were conversation points, but it has been just about that. Like, all right, who are we bringing in next? Who's gonna save the Jets? Who's gonna save the Giants? I can't even remember the feeling, although that Bears comeback kind of got me back there somewhat emotionally. I'm like, I'll do anything to feel this way again as a sports fan. And no matter how much I love baseball, and no matter how much I love the Knicks and the NBA and St. John's, like, the football energy, the every single snap, it's just a different speed, man. It is a different monster, and I need it, and we're nowhere near it. But I'll tell you this, when you see a Bears team and you see some of these other teams, like, think about some of the teams that played over the weekend, right? Like, how many of these situations were really, really, let's go back 2 years ago, were really good? I mean, did you like the Panthers situation? Not that they won over the weekend, but still, they were in it and they could have won. Did you like the Panthers? Did you like the Bears situation a couple of years ago? No. Did you like the Pats situation a couple of years ago before, Drake May was drafted, or even last year when you had Drake May and you won 4 games, the opposite of this year when you won 13? No. Even though the Chargers always lose here, one and done, before Harbaugh came, did you love their situation? No. Like, it could change fast. And I mean, I'm not going to try to convince you that it's going to change fast for the Jets, but eventually it is going to change. And it's going to change, and it's just going to hit us like a ton of bricks, and it's going to be amazing. Because I've actually forgotten how to be a good football fan. Like, it is so foreign. I honestly don't remember the last time I did it. You want to tell me Aaron Rodgers' first game? That's week 1. I mean, I've got to conjure up that emotion. You want to tell me, to a lesser extent, week 1 this year, high-scoring game, Glenn's first game, going against Rodgers. It's week 1. I mean, think about what the real football fans have now that we don't. I am desperate for it. Like Pookie in New Jack City. I need a football game that is worth watching for my Jets, like Pookie needs the crack pipe back in the late 80s, early 90s. Can somebody give it to me, please? Oh, my God. Oh, man, do I miss it. I miss it so much because these games are so awesome. But unless you're betting it, had a little action over the weekend, did pretty well. Nothing crazy. But unless you're betting it, at this point, fantasy's over, in terms of conventional fantasy from the regular season. Like, you watch it because it's just amazing theater. But now watching it with amazing theater, and it happens to be your team providing the amazing theater. Oh, my God. I want that so bad. I need that. Man, do I miss that. God. All right. What do we got here, guys? What do we got here? I mean, I don't really. I guess I'll figure this out after so and so reposted the stream. I think that's good. I'm not entirely sure. I think that's good. I'm really not sure, so we'll figure it out. All right, let me get you a little something here on the baseball stuff, okay? So over the weekend, Yankees, Bellinger, impasse. So what? Get lost. We don't need you, Bellinger. Like, I'm at my wit's end. I tweeted this over the weekend. Done. Dude, you don't want the Yankees? You go on your merry way. Go back to the Dodgers. Go to the Mets. I no longer care. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not smart enough to know what's going on. Like, the one thing, understand this, because think about where we were a year ago at this point, guys, right? With Pete Alonso. Oh, a year ago. Pete, God, looks like Pete's out the door. Oh, Mets getting ready to turn the page. Oh, wow, Pete's got an extension. Now, it was an extension that allowed Pete to opt out if he had a good year, which he did, and he opted out. Mets didn't want to do anything, which I never thought that they would. Baltimore comes in, 5-year deal. Boom. Pete gets rewarded properly. So he's going to have a good next half a decade with the Orioles for a fun team, and he's going to remain Pete Alonso hitting bombs, right? But the tone of the offseason a year ago was, all right, that's it, man. Met fans were actually conditioned, and that goes back to Amazing Day, right? Where, that's where you start to let Cohen and Stearns know, hey, you better bring our boy back here. What's going on? And I believe that was the impetus to change the minds. I think that I can't prove this, but this is where I think that they went into Amazing Day with no intention of signing Pete. You spoke, and then Cohen, who right now is letting Stearns do all the baseball stuff, which is smart because that's why you hired him. But I think last year, the owner got a little itchy there. And he's like, hey, listen, get this done, dude. I mean, I can't prove it. I think that's what happened. They got it done. Short deal. He played well. Mets didn't have a good season. He bounces, whatever. So do I think that Bellinger is going to sign a couple of year deal with an opt-out after one? No, I don't, because I think he's a more valued player than Pete because he does things that can show up and help you win a game when you go 0 for 4. And we know what those things are. Playing 3 or 4 spots, being a plus on the bags, all that stuff, right? So Bellinger's contract is going to be different than Pete, or at least Pete's contract last year. But it doesn't mean it can't take on the same characteristics. So I'm not sitting here saying that Bellinger absolutely is not going to be a Yankee. What I am saying is I don't care if he's a Yankee anymore at this point. I am tired of Boras, and let's not get this thing twisted here. Last year with Juan Soto, as Boras was raking us over the coals here, Yankees and he did a great job for his client. And by the way, he's doing a great job for his client, Bellinger, provided he gets what I think that he thinks he's going to get. He's not getting 7. Somebody's going to probably flinch and give him 6, or the 5 with a lot more money, or a big AAV with opt-out. The contract will look good, and we'll be able to be positioned as a win for Boras. You could bet that, because that's what's going to happen, because it almost always does with Boras, right? But last year, we had to sit here and, I wasn't begging and groveling for Juan Soto to come back, but I was very clear. I want him back. Why the hell wouldn't I want Juan Soto back behind Aaron Judge? It's the best thing I've ever seen, in my baseball, in my life, back to back. Even Mattingly and Winfield wasn't quite this, or, Ricky and Donnie. This was ridiculous, that one year with Judge and Soto. Epic. I don't think we'll ever see that again. I really don't. That's how unique that is, because I don't know if we'll see a player like Judge ever in our lifetime. And if you do, the chances of him being coupled with a stud like Soto, who has one of his best years ever in many different categories behind him, those odds are basically invisible. So, but you played the game because it's Juan Soto. I'm not playing this game anymore. Goodbye. I'll let you, go out there and do whatever. All right, yeah. Okay, great, Boras. Fantastic. All right, awesome. When you get the offer that you think is substantial enough for you to take, and if he really wants to be a Yankee, call us. Come back, right? Give us the number. We'll either say yes or no. And at that point, you have a decision to make. But I wouldn't even really do that as I think about that out loud, because that's preventing the Yankees from doing other stuff during the offseason. Now, I mean, something's got to happen here. And before you know it, it's going to be February 1st. Time's going, man. Like, it is now the middle of January. And I know that this happens year after year, and it trickles deeper and deeper into the offseason. And it's further complicated by the inevitable work stoppage, labor strike that is going to wreck. I don't care, what Manfred said the other day with Carton and C-Mac. It's going to be a disaster, right? So 2027 is going to be a mess. So, I mean, everything is a little more convoluted and more stressful. I understand that, right? But I'm trying to reduce the stress and just build the team, all right? And if the Yankees, all right, could make the playoffs without Juan Soto, which they did, then I'm pretty sure that the Yankees could make the playoffs without Bellinger, whose advanced analytics stink, all right? Doesn't hit. Now, I like him. This is not me doing a heel turn and going in on Bellinger. He's a good player. And there's reasons, right, for some of his soft numbers. Like, there's a reason why his exit velo is weak, because his two-strike approach is different. Just tries to flick the ball the other way, which I like when you have two strikes. Put the ball in play, right? So his strikeout rate is down, way below league average, which is a great thing. But some of the other things that are really favorable come contract time are lower than you would want, less than optimal. So it's a bit of a more complicated analysis, right? And negotiation. But if you watch Bellinger every night, you know that he's good, but you also know that he's not irreplaceable. That's it. Like, I'm not going past this week doing this song and dance with Bellinger. You want the Yankees? Great, we'll keep you. You don't? That's it. Goodbye. So what's the plan here? Well, now you got to incorporate the Cubs with Nico Hoerner. And, another thing too. So Bregman, 5 years for big money, right? With, I think, 77 or so deferred. Again, hey, Yankees, yo, Mets, this thing on? Can you guys for once devise a contract outside of Bonilla where there's real deferred money? Can you do this? Can you join the modern negotiations? Can you figure out that things are evolving and find a way to entice clients of whomever to sign with you that's also financially, beneficial to you down the road? Hey, here's a little secret. If you defer money, you can reinvest that money so that when it's time to pay that money in the deferral, the investment has given you a dividend. So you've made money. What an whoa, what a stunning development. I didn't know that. Well, I know it. And it doesn't seem like our locals, and if they do know it, it seems like they're very reticent to operate under those rules. And I just don't know why. Let me see. Wait, hold on. I can kick some cash down the road. Yeah, and I'm in. Because as you're doing that, you know what you're really doing? You're giving Aaron Judge a real chance to win. You're giving him a chance to actually get back to and win a World Series with a real team. Like you did for Derek and Reggie. I don't know, man. I am less I love Nico Hoerner. Let me get that out of the way. And I would love that for the Yankees. I love that for them. He can run. He can field. He's going to flirt with 300. He never strikes out. I think his K rate was like 8th percentile. Meaning, not 8th percentile. 8, like he struck out 8% of the time. So basically, it's like 92%, whatever it is. I mean, his K rate's phenomenal. And he's just a winner and a grinder. I don't know that as many of you assume that because they got Bregman and they've got a little bit of a logjam in the infield there, that Horner's the odd man out. I don't know about that. But what I would like to do at this point is I would like to trade for Nico Hoerner, and I would like to start my offseason. And what I would do at that point, I would say, you know what, dude, that's enough. Now, you've got to step back before I just drop the bottom line with Boris and Bellinger. You've got to be lined up with some other avenues and have the ability to say what I'm about to say. You should tell Boris and Bellinger. So I'm going to line it up such that I'm already engaging the Guardians, and I've got a deal. Who do you want? You want Louis Seal, and you want I don't know how appealing Heel is to. I'm not getting you Schlittler. So anybody else that you want. And the Yankees have 2 and really 3 arms that are of high value that have not yet pitched in the major leagues that universally, and this is not a Yankee homer, all right? Yeah, I think you know that about me by now. Universally, really, really thought to be plus pitchers that are coming up that throw really hard, that have lights out stuff. And you see, unlike the position players, the Yankees do get a little bit, and they've earned this, to be fair to them, the benefit of the doubt when it comes to pitching prospects around baseball versus their position prospects. All right. So the first thing you do, you engage, if you haven't already engaged the Guardians on some basic level, take it another step. Hey, we want Quan. All right. So we'll give you whatever. What do you want for Quan? And then we'll adjust that. And the Yankees have enough, whether it's a Jones, Dominguez, or a couple of the arms, or Heel, a couple of the young arms I mentioned, or Heel. You can satisfy, I strongly believe, the Guardians' demands for a Stephen Kwan deal. So I got Kwan as my left fielder. All right. So I don't need Bellinger right now. So that's done. Boom. Then I would have said trade Jazz to the Guardians, but I don't think they want him for $10 million. Otherwise, you keep Kwan, right? So then I take Jazz and I trade him for Jazz and another pitcher, and I'm in the Peralta sweepstakes. Not one of these middling pitchers, like one of the, obviously Cabrera's gone. There's not many of them, but I get myself, and I'm not talking about Skubal, the next cut, I get a starting pitcher. So I got Horner at second base, right? And then, you know what I'm going to say? I go bonkers and I pay Bichette. And I got a righty, and I got my left fielder, who's a great left fielder in Quan. All right, I don't love the Grisham situation, $22 million. I don't like him, but I'm not going to reset this all the time. I think the Yankees messed it up, but at least he's going to hit some home runs, and he'll be a good outfielder. Quan, Grisham, obviously Aaron Judge, Horner at second, and then as you figure out the Volpe injury, the Volpe standing within the franchise when he comes back, what he looks like, well, but Bichette could play third. You could even, if you don't trade Jazz, you could put Jazz. I know Jazz doesn't like playing third base. Tough. You're going to play where we tell you. So if somebody doesn't want to trade for Jazz, or the Yankees don't want to trade him, which I think they're inclined to do, then I can still mess around and have Jazz play a little third base, maybe trade McMahon. There's so many ways to go about this. And it takes creativity. It takes a proactive mindset. It takes a willingness to dance with a couple of teams on the trade market. It takes a willingness to cut a massive check for Bichette. But do not tell me that there's not a way for the Yankees to build out this team. I don't want to hear it. And it doesn't have to include Bellinger because, I think somebody's going to crack and give Bellinger that sixth year. I don't think it will be the Yankees. I don't think it should be the Yankees. I will not get on the Yankees if they say, nah, tapping out, we're good. We're not giving you six. If somebody else is, bye-bye, do your thing, go back to L.A., have fun wherever you're going to go. But I just gave you a roadmap where you'd have a great leadoff hitter in Quan. Horner, I mean, you could bat him. You could bat him second if you want to. Could you imagine? Now, it's an old school, not a ton of power, which I'm fine with. You can go Quan, Horner, Judge. I mean, think about that. Or you could go Quan, Bichette, Judge, and then almost have Horner down somewhere more at the bottom and kind of reset that in, the old school conventional 7, 8, 9 guy, top of the order, whatever. That's it. Like, that's the roadmap there. I don't know when these teams going to wake up and do something here, man. I don't know, but this offseason for the Yankees and the New York Mets has been as listless and as uninspiring, not confounding. I understand what's happening. Like, I agree with the Mets' plan to deconstruct. I've said that many times. I understand going through the game with Boris, but there's a limit where I'm not playing the game anymore, and I'm at the limit. That's why I'm here today. But up until this point, I haven't been confused. I've just been bored. It's been very boring. Last year the Soto stuff was incredible, Let's see. All right. Got a lot of football things there, obviously. Let me give you something here on the Mets. So to me, like, as a lesser extent to a degree, but like, I think that the Giants would really fail. Like, if the Giants would mess up if they don't get Harbaugh, because I think Harbaugh wants to go there, and I think that he will go there. Now, Peralta from the Brewers doesn't really have the say necessarily of where he goes. I don't think he's got a no trade. I know he's got 1 year to go. But I think similarly, if the Mets, because Peralta's gone, he's getting next 10 days, he's traded, book it. And I think Peralta's going to be a Met. And I've always thought that. But like, if the Mets flinch and they're not receptive to whatever the Brewers want back in return, well, then that's on the Mets. And then Stearns is going to get rightfully crushed because I don't think there's a lot of teams that have the perfect fit in terms of profile, like prospect profile that the Mets have to be able to satisfy the demands of the Brewers here. I think that it's a perfect fit. Now, forget about McLean. There's no way I'm giving him up for anybody, even Skubal at this point. I'm not doing it. That's how much I think of McLean. And if the Brewers want McLean and there's just no budging, deal's off. Go find somebody else. I'm not doing it. But you do have to find somebody to shield McLean. Like, you can't, not that you don't want him. I mean, not that he can't pitch opening day, but you just need a guy who's been there, you know, a 200 strikeout guy, a high inning guy, a guy that's won a lot of games, a guy that's been in the playoffs. Like, Peralta does so much, not just for the Mets, like this year, but as they build out the staff with some young guys. I think it would be really a home run fit. You'd have to think that Stearns' ties to Milwaukee gives him the upper hand, I would think. Now, if the Mets had a lame prospect base, this would be a pipe dream. But over the weekend, we'll learn. Well, and that's why you know he's going to get dealt. Like, when it becomes this concrete, like the Brewers want a young, major league ready starting pitcher in place of Peralta. Well, take Tong. All right, take Sproat. Take whoever you prefer. Now, I don't know what else it would take to make it's not going to be, I don't think it will be just Tong for Peralta. So this was a pretty good development over the weekend. Now, some of you might use this as fuel not to trade him, but Acuna hitting 4 home runs in Winter Bowl. I don't know. You want Tong and Acuna for Peralta? Done. Let's go. Like, I really think that he's got to be in New York, man. 204 strikeouts, 176 innings, a 2.70 ERA, a winner. He's making $8 million in 2026, and then he's a free agent. You know the Brewers aren't paying him. That's a done deal. You already know what they want. The Mets have the means to satisfy that. So I really think that they absolutely have to make that happen. I think that they will. More on those Stefanski. Let's see. I want to see if I can get a baseball thing here. Was offered. Report just came out that Bellinger was offered 5 years, 160. All right, I'm assuming that's the Yankees. Okay, good. That's fine. First, it was thought to be 30 AAV, which obviously is 150. You know, maybe the Yankees, sprinkle in 1.5, whatever, $2 million, a little bit too. I get $2 million, actually, literally at that point. That's fine. I don't care about the money. To me, what I desperately, if it came out and it was 5 years, 170, or even 175, which he's not worth, but with some deferrals, that's not gonna bother me. What bothers me about the Yankees is they have been, cheap is the wrong word, but they've been far too aware of how they construct these deals. And by stretching it out, they are avoiding absorbing, that bigger AAV each year. But by stretching it out, they've had to deal with decaying players and diminished players on the back end of contracts that we don't want anymore. And that's just a conversation that I'm done with. That's it. Like, come on. You got to learn from previous mistakes. So, again, I want Bellinger, but I want him at 5 years. Anything beyond that, get lost. And by the way, I even think, even at 5 years, whatever the money is, the plan that I just laid out, if you could execute that, where you got Quan in left and Nico Horner at second base, and either trade Jazz for a pitcher or put Jazz at third base, whatever, I actually think that in a lot of ways that's even better by just bringing back Bellinger and a starting pitcher. Now you got more contact, you got more speed, you got a plus left fielder. And listen, Belly's a great outfielder, but so is Quan. And Horner's a better second baseman than Jazz. And he makes more contact, and he's a higher average guy. So there's other ways to go. I got to dive into that. That's the problem. Not having everything set up yet behind the scenes, which I'm getting there. Yeah. All right, Nikki Fermato, what we got there? Nikki, thoughts on trading for Horner? I just brought that up. Another utility, consistent bat, versatility infield. You look at some of these numbers. Where is it with Horner? Where did I write it down? What did he strike out? 47 times last year? The hell is it? Yeah. All right. So Bregman 5 years, 70 plus deferred. Horner, Jazz to third base, maybe Horner to second. Last 4 years. How about this? We're going to geek out for a second. Because Horner to me is thought to be a utility player. And I understand that to an extent because he has bounced around a little bit, though not nearly as much as you think the last couple of years. He's been primarily second base, right? I think he played 153 at second this year. There was some early year, like, a little sprinkle of third, a little sprinkle of outfield. He's a second baseman. The last 4 years, check out these WARs, right? 4.2, 5.5, 3.7. Last year's WAR was 6.2. Like, that's not a super sub utility. That's not Joe McEwing, super sub, Andy Fox. That's a guy who's helping you win every single night. Hit 297, struck out 49 times. He stole 29 bags, and he's a great fielder, and he's making $12 million. So, yeah, there's a lot of things there that can be done. How about this guy? AJ Bianco. What's up, AJ? Can't figure out the Yankees thinking. How could they think they're as good or better than last year, especially with 2 starting pitchers on the shelf for a month or two? I don't know. If I had that answer, AJ, I really don't know. First of all, okay, even if the Yankees were, think about this. Now, the essence of that question is a massive problem because AJ's not wrong in his premise. Basically the Yankees are in their minds thinking, well, we were basically good enough last year and almost won the division, tied Toronto, 94 wins. And, Garrett Cole comes back. Maybe we win the division, blah, blah, blah. We're whatever, different matchup, home field. All right. The Yankees weren't good enough with Bellinger last year. We all know that, right? So to just bring back Bellinger is to merely get back to a point that was not good enough. Thank you very much for the text there. To a point that's not good enough to win. And by the way, last year really just kind of had to worry about Toronto. I think it's a totally different beast, a totally different animal in the American League East this year. I think the Red Sox are going to be pretty good. I think Baltimore is going to be better. I think Tampa's going to be scrappy. Yanks are the only one who hasn't done anything in the division. Everybody else has gotten better. All right. So I don't think that this division, I think that the division winner could win fewer than 94 games. I really do. I think it could be 92, 93. I don't see anybody winning, anybody, including the Yankees, even if they do all these things that I want them to do. I don't think, maybe Toronto if they got Tucker, maybe. But like the 98, 99, 100 win threat, messing around with that, I don't think that's going to happen this year in the American League East here. So I think it's a very faulty thought process and a very dangerous one to think, well, it's a crapshoot. Get to October, never know. We'll bring back Bellinger, we'll win the division again, and maybe, or we'll tie for it again. We'll be right there, and we'll theoretically be better because we'll have Cole come back and Rodon come back. Here's the problem, though. And I understand that to an extent, right? But you are leaning on a couple of factors. Number one, the other team's not getting better, which I just dispelled. They're going to be better. And even if all of them aren't better, at least 2 of the 3 are going to be significantly better. Fewer wins there. Number 2, if you don't get Bellinger, and even if you do, and you don't do the Quan, the Nico Horner stuff, whatever, trade Jazz for starting pitcher or somebody else for starting pitcher, well, there is a real chance that the Yankees stumble out of the gate this year. 12-15, 11-15. Now, could they stun us and start 13-4? Sure. But I've got to deal in the reality of the type of arms they're going to be running out there against really good teams. And you're going to be going to Will Warren a lot early and Yarborough a lot early and Luis Heel. I don't know what the heck he is at this point, and that, and obviously Max Fried, of course, but that's a lot of trips through the rotation that I don't think is really going to give the Yankees a chance to win a lot of low-scoring games. Not to mention, guys, I've just kind of pushed this to the side. The bullpen stinks outside of Bednar. So I just think it's incredibly right now the Yankees aren't even a playoff team. You could think what you want, but I think most of you are with me on this. The Yankees are a non-playoff team, in my opinion, right now. And even if it's just Bellinger, flip a coin, I still don't know. So, all these things they got to do, they've yet to do anything. It's getting late early, and they got to start moving. And I don't know when that's going to be. I really don't. Somebody talking about the Knicks here. Yeah, I watched the Knicks last night, obviously. Felice says, thank you very much. I appreciate that text there, Felice. Knicks have the heart back. Yeah, they do. I see what you did there. Come on, BT. Let's go. Talk some hoops. Yeah, today's more of a football, basketball day. I watched the Knicks. Cat wasn't thrilled. He was on the bench. Tough. You don't like it? Too bad. Do some other things better, and you won't be on the bench for the final 7 or 8 minutes. That's one thing that I like about Mike Brown, is that he goes with the hot hand rather than forcing the issue. And yeah, you do see a different Knicks team with Josh Hart. So now I still don't love the fact that, it's basically, back and forth with the Portland Trailblazers, who are a middling average, basically a couple of games under 500 team. I mean, could you blow somebody out? But no, you got to start somewhere. I'm not going to quibble on style points. But I do like that adaptability, something I talked a lot about with Mike Brown as the coach here. Let's see here. Serpico, who's checked in quite a bit. Big fan of the show. What up, Serp? All right, I'm here late. Well, where were you? That's on you. It's not on me. Did you hear the rumor the Yankees in the lead for Peralta? Apparently, Louis Hill is the centerpiece. If that's the deal, do it. Because remember, the Astros wanted Louis Hill for Kyle Tucker, and the Yankees said no. And I thought that was asinine. Now, obviously, he doesn't have the same value, and Peralta's not quite Tucker. But if it's, Louis Hill, I did not see that. Again, I'm on air. Thank you. Although I did say that I think that the Yankees are squarely in the mix. I just think that the Mets have more resources to get it done. Now, if it's Louis Hill and a lower level minor leaguer that's highly valued that I don't know about, I'm not going to get into the weeds on that now. And that satisfies what the Brewers want. Great. I'll do that in a heartbeat. You want Louis Hill? I get Peralta? Done. Where do I sign? But that would be a bad look for the Mets. Like, the Mets can't let that happen. Not to the point where they up the ante and throw McClain in there. That would be asinine. They're not doing that. But to me, like, I would